All right, are you ready to get started?
I am.
All right, let's just start with your name and title.
I'm Major General Jeff Buchanan. I'm the spokesman for United States Forces Iraq.
Let's just start out with a basic question. How would you describe the security situation in Iraq right now?
Well, I think that the security situation is relatively stable. We've seen, a fairly consistent level of incidents. They've been lower than they were over the summer time frame, but the level of violence is well down compared to where it had been in past years, and the Iraqi security forces is doing an incredible job maintaining security throughout the country.
What are your concerns in terms of Iraqi security forces and their ability to maintain security once U.S. forces have left?
Well, I think that, first of all, they need to continue to develop. They need to continue to work on their ability to collect, analyze, and disseminate intelligence and share intelligence from agency to agency. That's important for both the internal security situation as well as future external threats that they may face. They also need to continue to work on their ability to sustain themselves, support themselves logistically, and they are just starting to have the capabilities that they need for long-term external defense needs, so they're going to need to continue to develop those. With respect to the specific threats, I think whether it's al-Qaeda in Iraq or the various Iranian-backed militant groups, the Iraqi security forces have demonstrated in the past that they have the capability of dealing with these groups. But in all cases, they've got to continue to put relentless pressure on all parts of the networks, because the threats themselves are not going away unless they have continued pressure, and it's a long-term issue for the Iraqi security forces.
I'm certainly not going to say this is widespread criticism, but certainly one hears criticism of President Obama and the withdrawal of U.S. troops out of Iraq by the end of the year. There are some concerns in the United States that once that happens, many of the gains that American forces made in Iraq will be lost. How do you respond to those kinds of concerns?
Well, first of all, I've seen a lot serving here for a number of years and working with the Iraqi security forces. I am optimistic about the future. I think that right now the Iraqi people and the Iraqi security forces have a tremendous set of opportunities before them. We've seen them make progress in their ability to have a country that is stable, that's sovereign, and that's self-reliant. But frankly, they're not where they need to be yet. They're going to need to continue to work on it to reach full stability, full sovereignty, and full reliance on their own means to provide for all of their people. But they are continuing to make progress. And they have committed to an enduring partnership with the United States, just as the United States is committed to an enduring partnership with Iraq. And so when you add all these things together, I don't think they're where they need to be right now, but I also have confidence that we're going to be able to continue to help them move forward in the future.
In terms of looking ahead to next year, what kind of American presence will be in Iraq? What will the makeup of Americans in Iraq be next year?
Well, from a government perspective, certainly the United States Embassy and the United States Mission Iraq has a very robust series of programs. And of course, we're working out the details with the Iraqi government on how exactly do we implement all of the specific desires aspired to in the Strategic Framework Agreement. Those that aspire to enduring and enhanced cooperation in the education field, in economic development, in cultural development, and sharing science and technology, as well as defense and security cooperation. So I think this is one of the things that with the meeting of the High Coordinating Committee in the very near future of both of our governments, this is an opportunity to actually flesh out and put some more specifics on the implementation of the Strategic Framework Agreement. But it'll clearly be led by a diplomatic presence under Ambassador Jim Jeffrey, who will bring together the capabilities of a wide series of government agencies, everything ranging from defense and state to commerce, justice, treasury, many governmental agencies that will continue to work on and help Iraq's ability to develop its civil capacity to better provide for its own citizens. But I also think that your question, leaves the door open to discuss what about non-governmental American presence. And this is one thing I think that the Iraqi people want very much is investment by U.S. companies into their country. And we've seen a lot of progress with the Iraqi government and the U.S. government working together to help them with legislation so that they can better protect financial investments. We see a significant amount of involvement by the U.S. Chambers of Commerce to attract and bring American businessmen to look at investing in Iraq. And this is part of the relationship that the Iraqis envision having with the United States in the future.
Is there any sense at this point about the number of civilians that would be expected to be in Iraq next year? And then who is going to be providing security for the Americans?
There is. I think that our U.S. embassy here will be similar to the size of our embassies in India, Germany, China. Obviously very important partners of the United States in all cases, with a robust multi-government agency participation in a large embassy. And of course here it includes 2 additional consulates general in Basra and Erbil and a diplomatic presence post in Kirkuk, which will continue to develop in the future. As far as security, security is always the security of the embassy itself is the responsibility of the regional security officer and his team, just like it is on any embassy. There's a small Marine security guard detachment here, just as there are in U.S. embassies around the world. And then the bulk of security that'll be provided on the perimeters of the embassy sites or during movements will be provided by contractors under the supervision of the RSO.
In terms of contractors, what is the situation in terms of what laws they need to obey? Are they going to be subjected to Iraqi laws, or how would it work with contractors?
Well, currently, all contractors in that are, whether they're U.S. contractors, Iraqi citizens, or contractors that come from other countries, are in accordance with the security agreement that the United States and Iraq signed in 2008. They are all subject to Iraqi law right now.
I also wanted to ask you about Muqtada al-Sadr. What do you see as how would you describe the posture he has taken right now, and what kind of role do you see him taking in the future, and what are your concerns about that?
Well, I can't speculate too much about the future, but I think it's certainly worthy talking about what we've seen from the Sadrist trend and their activities of late. If you go back a year ago when we saw the pieces coming together for government formation, I think we were all very heartened and optimistic about the opportunity to have a government that was representative of all Iraqis and inclusive of all. And we saw groups that had been excluded in the past, like the Sadrist trend, make a commitment to join the government. And that, of course, was heartening because it looked like these groups were determined to be part of the solution for democracy in helping to solve Iraq's problem through dialogue. But at the same time, this particular set of political parties, and in particular under Muqtada al-Sadr, have maintained a militant wing, the Promise Day Brigade, that has attacked Americans over the years, has maintained its attacks, and has claimed responsibility for these attacks, and they do so openly. And having a militia is directly against Iraq's constitution. And in fact, one could argue that it undermines Iraq's sovereignty. So I think this is a concern that this group in the past and currently threatens the Iraqi government, certainly threatens the United States government, but threatens its own government that it's determined to become a part of with violence if it doesn't get its way. It's inconsistent with democracy to have a militia that you're going to, employ on the state if you don't get your way. So we are concerned about his and his party's threats now and into the future.
I was also just curious in terms of your sense about public opinion in Iraq vis-a-vis the Arab Spring. Sadr has been very supportive of Assad in Syria, and I wondered if that was at all on the radar screen in Iraq, if that's a factor or not really.
I don't have a great sense for what's happening in all parts of the Iraqi street right now as far as public opinion, but he has obviously changed his stance depending on the situation, whether it was Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Bahrain, and Syria. It's all very much lined up with political realities from his perspective rather than the overall broad idea of will of the people. What I am not sure about is how that exactly is playing in the Iraqi street right now.
What are your concerns about Iran, and do you get a sense in terms of Iran of any kind of preparations or plans once U.S. troops have withdrawn?
Well, I think, first of all, it's, Iran and Iraq share a very long border, and it's important that the two countries have a relationship. Iraq has reached out to Iran over the past, just like it has most of its other neighbors, to try to establish a more positive relationship. And we think Iraq should have a relationship